The Lockheed P-38 Lightning looked like no fighter that had ever flown before. With its twin booms stretching out like the prongs of a tuning fork, a central cockpit nacelle, and counter-rotating propellers biting into the air, it seemed less like a weapon of the present and more like a machine borrowed from the future. To pilots and engineers alike, it was radical, something completely outside the box of conventional design. But bold shapes do not always guarantee perfect performance. Beneath its futuristic silhouette, the Lightning hid quirks and flaws that nearly sabotaged its combat reputation before it ever had the chance to prove itself. Nowhere were those flaws more apparent than in Europe. High above the clouds, the P-38 was confronted with a brutal reality. At certain speeds and altitudes, its sleek wings became its enemy. As the aircraft accelerated in a dive and edged into the thin, icy air, pilots found themselves caught in the invisible grip of compressibility. Around 0.68 to 0.72 Mach, shockwaves built across the wing surfaces, hammering the tailplane and forcing the nose down in a deadly plunge. The controls went stiff, the elevator became useless, and desperate pilots discovered that no matter how hard they pulled, the Lightning refused to respond. Some never made it out. Others blacked out from the crushing G-forces before smashing into the ground or ocean below. Engineers scrambled for answers. By 1943, the solution arrived in the form of dive recovery. Flaps small, clever panels fitted beneath the wings of the P-38 Joules and later models. These devices broke up the airflow, restored control, and gave pilots a fighting chance in high-speed dives. Yet by then, a reputation had already taken hold. The Lightning was dangerous at the edge of its envelope, an unforgiving machine that demanded more respect and more fear than its single-engine cousins. But here's the real debate. Was this flaw proof that the P-38 was ahead of its time, or simply proof that it was never truly ready for war? If the Lightning's dive problems weren't enough, pilots soon discovered that flying it in close combat brought its own set of challenges. The twin-boom design, while striking and aerodynamically clever, made the aircraft sluggish when it came to rolling. In a world where nimble single-engine fighters like the Bf-109 or Spitfire could twist and turn on a dime, the P-38 often felt like a heavyweight boxer trying to keep up with a featherweight. Quick defensive rolls or rapid changes of direction were simply not its strong suit. This weakness became especially dangerous in turning dogfights. The Lightning could hold speed and climb well, but once it was drawn into tight maneuvers at low speeds, its large frame left it vulnerable. German and Japanese pilots quickly realized that if they could force a P-38 into a turning contest, its chances of survival plummeted. For many American aviators, the first rule of survival was simple. Never get caught turning with the enemy. The engines, meanwhile, were a mixed blessing. Each wing housed an Allison V1710 fitted with a turbo supercharger, giving the Lightning excellent high-altitude performance on paper. But reality was harsher. In the frigid skies over Europe, poor intercooling meant detonation was common, and the turbos themselves often shook apart from vibration or heat stress. A single failure could spell disaster, not only because of lost power, but because asymmetric thrust turned the aircraft into a wrestling match. Keeping the Lightning steady on one engine demanded everything a pilot had. Landing it that way was even worse, part skill, part luck, and sometimes pure prayer. Inside the cockpit, conditions were far from glamorous. Heat was inadequate at high altitudes, and pilots routinely suffered frostbite, numb fingers, and glassy-eyed exhaustion. The canopy framing made rear visibility poor, and even ground crews groaned at the workload. The Lightning devoured. Maintenance hours and certain repairs were nearly impossible without direct factory support. For many squadrons, the aircraft felt like a diva, demanding, temperamental, and punishing to anyone who didn't give it absolute respect. For all its flaws, the P-38 Lightning had one feature that immediately won the respect of the men who flew it: firepower. While most Allied fighters relied on wing-mounted machine guns, which required careful convergence settings and lost accuracy beyond a certain distance, the Lightning packed its teeth in the nose. 4.50 caliber Browning machine guns and a 20mm cannon, all aligned straight ahead, meant every round fired traveled along the same path. There was no convergence guesswork, no wasted firepower, just a focused torrent of bullets and shells tearing into the target. For marksmen like America's two top aces, Richard Bong and Thomas Maguire, this setup was deadly. They didn't need to get dangerously close or calculate tricky angles. A single well-timed burst could shred a Japanese Zero or Ki 43 from hundreds of yards away. Pilots often said that when the P-38 fired, it felt less like a fighter and more like a flying sniper rifle. Then there was the range. With over 400 gallons of internal fuel and the ability to carry drop tanks, the Lightning could travel more than 2,000 miles on a single mission, an extraordinary figure for the early war years. While other American fighters struggled to escort bombers or reach distant targets, the P-38 could patrol island chains, intercept formations deep over enemy territory, or strike at Japanese shipping far beyond the reach of other planes. In the Pacific, this ability changed everything. And despite its dangerous asymmetric thrust, the twin engines also provided a unique kind of insurance. A single-engine fighter with a dead motor was going down. A Lightning, on the other hand, could often limp home on one, giving pilots at least a fighting chance of survival. Countless crews owed their lives to that second Allison engine, dragging them back over friendly lines. The P-38's record in Europe was, at best, mixed. Against the Luftwaffe's sleek Bf 109 seconds and 4 of 190 seconds, the Lightning often felt out of its element. The freezing air at high altitudes punished its engines, intercoolers, and turbos, while its sluggish roll rate left it exposed in twisting dogfights. Escort missions over Germany turned into brutal lessons, with many pilots losing faith in the aircraft. To critics, it was too big, too complex, and simply unsuited for the deadly chess match that was aerial combat over the Reich. But in the Pacific, the story was different. Warmer air eased the engine problems, and the vast distances between islands made range the ultimate weapon. Japanese fighters, lightly built and slower than their German counterparts, were vulnerable to the Lightning's speed and heavy guns. A Zero might outturn a P-38, but it couldn't withstand its firepower or catch it in a climb or dive. Equally important were tactics. In Europe, bomber escort duty often shackled Lightning squadrons to rigid formations, robbing them of flexibility. In the Pacific, Bong, Maguire, and other pilots were given more freedom. They flew in pairs or small groups, using boom and zoom attacks that played to the Lightning's strengths: high speed, powerful dives, and devastating firepower. Instead of fighting against the plane's weaknesses, they adapted to them. The result was extraordinary: kill counts and unmatched dominance across wide swaths of ocean. The environment, the mission, and the mindset all aligned. The same aircraft that struggled in Europe became the spearhead of American air power in the Pacific. By the end of World War II, the P-38 Lightning had carved out a reputation unlike any other fighter of its era. It was not the most graceful nor the easiest to fly. It demanded constant attention, punished mistakes, and terrified those who underestimated its quirks. Yet in the right hands and in the right theater, it became one of the most effective weapons in the U.S. arsenal. America's two top aces, Richard Bong and Thomas Maguire, both owed their records to the Lightning. Together, they scored more than 70 confirmed victories, an achievement no other pair of American pilots could match. Their success wasn't just about the aircraft, it was about adaptation. They learned to exploit its strengths, unmatched range, devastating concentrated firepower, and solid stability in high-speed firing runs while avoiding its pitfalls. Where others saw flaws, they found opportunities. The P-38 was more than a fighter. It served as a bomber interceptor, long-range escort, ground attack platform, and reconnaissance aircraft. It hunted enemy shipping, strafed airfields, and photographed the war from altitudes few others could reach. Even its weaknesses, like struggling against agile German fighters, were balanced by its unmatched versatility. Looking back, historians often call it a paradox, a flawed masterpiece. In Europe, it was outclassed, plagued by cold and unforgiving skies. In the Pacific, it was untouchable, rewriting the rules of aerial warfare across thousands of miles of ocean. Its story is proof that context matters as much as design, and that a plane can be both a disappointment and a legend, depending on where it fights. So here's the final question. Was the P-38 Lightning truly one of the greatest fighters of World War II, or just a specialized tool that got lucky in the right theater?